I'm kind of like the extreme guy. I'm either going to drink water or Coke. I'm not going to go for Diet Coke.
What in the world is this pile of cards, and how does this make any sense at all?
Hello and welcome to the 68th episode of Everyday Channel. With me tonight are my co-host Eric Lanton and as a special guest from Beijing, China, my good friend James Hsu. Hey guys, how's it going? Eric, what have you been up to?
Hey guys, I have just been playing a lot of Legacy, getting ready for GP Bologna coming up. I went to the Puget Sound Battleground tournament up in Seattle last weekend. Getting some losses out of my way before heading to Italy.
Did you use it to test for Italy, or was it more like, oh, I want to get some games in?
A little bit of both. It was kind of to get some paper magic under my belt, because it had been a little while since I'd played paper magic, so I wanted to get in at least one tournament before I head to Italy. Luckily, there are some medium-sized Legacy tournaments at the local shops around Italy in the week leading up to the GP, so I'll get to play some more.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of tournaments, right? I'm still not sure when I'm going to arrive in town, but I also want to hit a couple of those events because those are definitely going to be a lot of fun. Yeah. I noticed that you didn't mention how you actually ended up going in Seattle, so I'm definitely going to ask you, what was your final record in the end?
2-3 drop.
So you got 50 player points?
No, I didn't get anything other than a sad ride home.
But if I know something, then that you're probably going to do better in Bologna. I'm pretty sure about that.
That was the plan, yeah.
Anything else? Has there been a secret list you've been working on, or is Legacy somewhat figured out, at least from your perspective right now?
Yeah, I've been working a little bit on Grixis Delver just because I have Grixis cards, and I don't have Rug cards, but I haven't found a list that I think is super strong, and it's all right, but I'm not excited about it. And yeah, other than that, I haven't been doing much brewing or anything because I feel like, as you said, from my perspective, it feels like there isn't a whole lot of room in Legacy right now.
Oh, we will definitely get to speak about that later on. I have a feeling we will see you navigating your way through or actually casting some Grizzle brands, even if it comes to that. But James, how's it going for you? It's so good to have you on the podcast. I think it's the first time that you're on Everyday Channel tonight, or ever.
That's right. And first of all, I just want to say I'm super excited to be here. It's really hard to keep up with you guys because you guys are so accomplished in terms of Legacy and Magic achievements, but I'll do my best. Just really excited to be here. I've been having a lot of fun working on Magic-related stuff. My day job is Cardboard Live, so just working on a lot of things for Cardboard Live, trying to improve the experience for streamers. We wrapped up Mythic Championship 6, and we are now preparing for 7, which is coming up really soon. And in addition to that, just doing a little bit of podcasting like you guys, cranking out Humans of Magic episodes. So that's a little bit about what's been going on with me right now.
So yeah, for those of you who actually happen to live under a rock and don't know James is not only, together with Wilson Hunter, the person who is bringing us Cardboard Live, he's also a very accomplished author and also podcaster in the Magic multiverse. So Humans of Magic, that's your latest book, right? That came out. Previously, you released, I think, a couple of years ago, Magic the Addiction. And now you turned, what I want to say, one of the best podcasts, not only in Magic, but to me, I honestly mean it. We are friends, but I honestly mean that Humans of Magic is probably one of the best podcasts in all of esports. I listen to a lot of other podcasts that are not Magic related, and this is, your interview technique is absolutely outstanding. That's why I'm almost... if we weren't friends, I would be starstruck having you on tonight. I want to say. So, can you tell us a little bit about Humans of Magic, especially about the book that you just released, for people who are curious about that?
Oh, well, you're being far too kind, Julian. I just enjoy doing Magic content like you guys, and the Humans of Magic book is essentially a greatest hits collection of 12 of the best interviews that I've conducted over the years. The interviews were done via audio, but I took the time to transcribe them into text because I realized that there are some people that really enjoy reading about the interviews or reading the interviews. And that's what I tried to do. Basically, the book has the interviews that I enjoyed the most. They had some really relevant themes. In fact, one of our co-hosts on this show, Bob Huang, was actually in the book. And it's really just taking the interviews, adding a little bit of introductions, trying to create some themes to unify them together. And that's really the book in a nutshell.
And where can people get that? I would guess it's on Amazon.
It is on Amazon. It is on basically all of the Amazon marketplaces, whether in the US or otherwise. You can get it on Amazon for both paperback or Kindle.
Or you could have also gotten it by signing up to the Orlov Legacy event in Beijing earlier this month, right? I saw a lot of people who were actually standing in line to get your book, to actually get your signature into the book. And now that I think about it, why didn't I get that? I should have actually brought my copy. I missed out.
Don't worry about it. I'll hook you up next time. But yes, if you happen to run into me somewhere, I have stacks and stacks of the book available. So there you go.
Awesome. In speaking of the Legacy Orlov event, that's James, maybe you can tell us something about that. I've been to that tournament as well. I had an amazing experience in China, my second time in China, and this tournament, we've teased it a couple of times on the podcast, and now it actually happened. So for those who don't know about it, James, can you tell us a little bit about Beijing Orlov?
Yeah, absolutely. So Beijing Legacy Orlov, this year was the 10K. The prize pool has just gotten larger and larger. So it's basically a passion project because we have a very generous sponsor, Haobo, who also known as Mr. Orlov. I guess it's a Lord of War reference. He really
That's
enjoys
how the judges introduced him. I like that a lot.
Exactly. So it's a pseudonym. And he's been holding legacy tournaments. I think this year was the 7th annual tournament. And we really wanted to have a grassroots legacy tournament because, first of all, he really loves legacy. And we have a pretty vibrant Magic scene in general in China. And there's a lot of players who don't often get the chance to travel outside of China to play in events for various reasons. And so we wanted to have something homegrown that is actually fairly special and people feel involved and they can play for big stakes. And so this is, I think, one of the biggest cash prize tournaments around. For a $40 entry fee, you have a chance to win something like $3,000 in cash for the grand prize. And so it's very prestigious. We hold it every year. We do a lot of raffle draws and promotion. Sometimes we get special foreign guests such as yourself, Julian, to attend the tournament. And it's just an all-around good time. So that's really what the tournament's about. It's an annual tournament. It's held in Beijing every year, usually around November, December timeframe. And it kind of runs like clockwork. So we did one this year, and there will definitely be another one in 2020.
Already looking forward to that. I had such an amazing experience there. We talked a little bit about it on your podcast where I was a guest 2 weeks ago. And I just want to say, I had two very different but super interesting experiences in China. Like last year, us and Wilson went together and we did a lot of stuff together. This time I was exploring the city a little bit more of my own. And I don't know, I mean, I really got that kind of, I don't want to say lost in translation vibe because that's a movie based in Japan, but it certainly felt a little bit like that. You know, if you're like in this big foreign city and I had this apartment that you provided for me, which was like super nice of you. And it really gave me the feeling like for a week of actually living in Beijing as a foreigner, and with everything that comes along with that, like how to get food, where do you meet people, like meet up with expats and like hear their life stories. And to me, it was, even though it was just a week, it was incredibly inspiring to me. I almost want to say like Magic was almost secondary to this kind of trip, just because of the cultural experience this time was even more pronounced, I want to say. I think, Eric, you also went last year, right? I think you might have been considering this year. Maybe we're going to see you next year again, depending on where you are in the world.
I did go last year. This year, it was not really in my consideration just because the trip, I mean, I was in Thailand last year, so it was a much easier trip. But it was definitely really fun, and I would like to hopefully be able to go back again. who knows what my circumstances will be next year, but I'd love to go.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I think we also had some international representation this year. We also had Peter from Austria who showed up. And I think that, Yeet, right, from Turkey. We will speak about his deck later on. So that's definitely cool. And I'm just like mentioning this so often on the podcast, if you've listened to the last couple of episodes, because I would really love to see even more foreigners at this tournament, not only because it's such a special experience, but because it's also very profitable. I think we actually would need to calculate how you need to go to actually justify the trip finance-wise. But I mean, you're not going to these tournaments to break even or make money. I mean, when people like, that's an entirely different discussion. What makes a pro? I've heard people call me a pro, and I always felt like, no, like the guys like Reed Duke, LSV, those are pros. And in the end, it doesn't matter. It's really about the experience. And if you get to break even, that's even better. So, and there's few super international legacy tournaments that are more suitable for breaking even than the legacy Orlov 10K, which still blows my mind, right? We had 100 people this year. So basically for every person entering, there was like $100 into the prize pool. And I think that the sign-up fee is only like $40 or $42. So I don't know where you would find that anywhere in the world. But in speaking of playing in the tournament, actually, James, you didn't play in the tournament. Actually, you also didn't play in the tournament last year. I'm so sorry. But you got to... you weren't good enough, right? You didn't qualify. No, seriously. You did commentary this year again, right?
Yeah, I was part of the organizational team, and I'm one of the players there who's bilingual. And so last year we tried to do a little bit of bilingual commentary. This year I also did commentary, but it was purely in Mandarin. And we're actually going to hand it off to the excellent legacy commentators who exist in North America, like Anurag Das and others to basically take that on. And so, anyways, bottom line is I still did the commentary this year and had a good time. You know, I'm basically more involved in the organization and promotion of it. And so I was happy to basically not play in it and just help out with the logistics.
From what I can say, your commentary team is quite professional in the setup that you have. I gotta admit, when I first came to China, I didn't expect much in terms of like technical setup. Maybe that was actually some kind of prejudice that I had, but it looked better than most tournaments I go to here in Europe have. So, yeah, really happy to see that. And from my side, maybe I'm quickly going to speak about my tournament. I played Rug Delver, surprise, surprise, pretty much the same list that I played in the Legacy Premier League. And spoiler alert, I didn't get to day 2. So in order to day 2, you needed to finish in the top 16 of the top 100 players, which would have required something like a very good 5-2 or better. I think there were a couple of 5-2 players who didn't make day 2 because of tiebreakers. And I ended the first day at 4-3. So unlike last year where I managed to break that, I couldn't get that this year. So I don't want to get too deep into all the details about my tournament, but let me just quickly go through the first round. So my first round, I have a bye. Very convenient. Thank you very much. In the second round, I am actually put into the feature match area, and I'm up against what turns out to be Esper Mentor. I end up winning in 3 games. It's gonna be on my YouTube by next week. So actually, if you're listening to this, you could actually be listening to this on the weekend. Anyway, so it's gonna be on my YouTube pretty soon. You can watch that over there. After the match, James, you actually came over and told me that my opponent had a couple of interesting cards that I didn't really get to see. Is like Kaya, not Kaya Ghost Assassin, but the other Kaya that like removes creatures and stuff. But looks like things didn't really work out very well for them. I actually ended up sideboarding out all of my wastelands because I thought they were like straight up blue-white miracles and didn't really get to see black until like very late in the third game. But yeah, that worked out pretty well for me. In the third round, I'm paired against something quite interesting. I think a deck that I want to speak a little bit about later on, which is blue-green Omnitel. So not your typical mono blue or like splash red Omnitel. It's actually it's green Omnitel that played 3 Veil of Summer as well as like Carpet of Flowers in the sideboard. And yeah, that was. You don't often hear me say I get unlucky. I hope at least. I hope I don't have that image of somebody who always says, oh, I got unlucky there and then I got unlucky next round and something just happened and I got unlucky. But this one, this one really was one of those matches where just like the cantrips let me down big time, and I ended up losing it in 3. But round 4, I make up for it, and I'm almost sorry, but I ended up playing against elves, and I played Ren 6 in the second turn, and the game was pretty much over. I almost felt sorry for the guy. As soon as I saw, like when I saw them fetch for a basic forest, I was already feeling, oh, could this be? And then they play Korean Ranger, I untapped and made Ren 6, and you can feel the consternation in your opponent's manners, even though they might not even speak English. It's just, okay.
The body language, right? All that stuff.
Yeah. I felt so sorry. There was something like when I see somebody playing elves and I destroy them. I also did that with miracles when I played in a tournament once. I just feel like I'm betraying something, even though I don't feel like I'm married to the deck. It's still like the deck that gave me my biggest success, and it not doing well hurts me a little bit. But in speaking of not doing well, next round I'm up against Mr. Orlov himself. At this point I think I'm 3-1, yeah, and the next loss might put me out of the tournament. Like I said, the X2 wasn't really sure whether it would day 2, but probably would. But I ended up losing it in 3 games. Haubo was playing Bug Food Chain, very interesting list that I also want to speak about later on, because he played 4 Gilded Goose to get around the Ren 6 epidemic that we're having right now. And it was one of those games that was actually quite interesting. I get destroyed in the first game. I actually managed to steal the second game from a very, very bad position. Like I'm very far behind on board. Like I have to make a couple of jump blocks just to keep my Ren 6 alive. And Haubo doesn't really manage, like he has some cards, but he doesn't really manage to foster a really good offense, and he also can't really get the combo down. So he's just sitting there dawdling around a little bit, but probably like sitting behind something like 3 Force of Wills, I don't know. But I managed to ultimate my Ren 6, and at this point I'm really not sure, because this hasn't come up for me yet, if I have the emblem and I have Submerge in the graveyard, can I actually cast Submerge for his alternate cost? And as the judge confirms, I can. And then I go absolutely crazy, because one of the reasons I didn't really get too deep into the game was that I was holding a lot of lands. And all of those lands instantly turn into Submerge. And we just go crazy. I discard my land and Submerge his entire board pretty much. It's almost like a one-sided evacuation. And managed to steal the game that way. So if you've never done that, Ren 6 plus Submerge, absolutely amazing. Unfortunately, I end up losing the third game. I'm pretty sure I could have drawn the third game, but I didn't really want to play towards a draw. And Haubo and I spoke about it later on over dinner. And he also didn't really want the draw, because he felt he could have also secured the draw had he played in a different way, but he was playing for the win, and so was I. Looking back, if I really wanted to maximize, like, quote-unquote EV, I guess, I should have probably pushed for the draw. But there's something, I don't know how to describe it, James. I talked to you a little bit about it. There's something about like going there and being, well, a guest in China and also being a competitive player, that I felt like, okay, I think I just like want to push for the win. And even though it's more like a 30% win that I can push for as opposed to like a 99% draw, it was probably like the wrong move EV-wise. I just felt like, I don't want to say the right thing to do, because that would imply that people who force the draw are doing the wrong thing, which they certainly are not. It was just one of those things.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of preference, and you're a very fierce competitor, so I can definitely see you going for the winning line.
Yeah. Looking back, of course, this was the thing, right, that put me out of top 16 contention, but I don't hate it. Like, I still believe in hopefully changing Magic tournament structure in general in a way that draws aren't really anything that any player would look forward to. But yeah, anyway, looking back, I just feel like I wanted to win the game so badly, but I couldn't. Okay, so X2, I still think there might be a chance to get into the day 2, but I get immediately crushed by blue-white-red Mentor. It wasn't even like miracles or anything, it was straight up blue-white-red Mentor. I lose in 2 games. First game doesn't really work out for me, mulligan a lot, and like get the wrong end of a couple of trades. Second game, super interesting situation. And I would actually like to hear your thoughts on that as well. So if any of those situations I had in the tournament that I want to talk about, it's this one. at the end of my opponent's turn, he's tapped out, he's got 4 cards in hand, and he has Rest in Peace in play. I have exactly 2 lands, a Force plus Pitch, and Pyroblast, and Renin 6. So on his end of turn, I can go for the Return to Nature on the Rest in Peace, and protect it with a Force of Will, and untap into Renin 6. Oh, and by the way, I also have Tarmogoyf in play that also gets to put a lot of pressure. Of course, I could also wait until my turn and do that, play a land, and have the Parablast up. So I would have double protection, but if I do that, then I can't play Renin 6. So I would play Renin 6 into open mana if I was to do that. So if your opponent has 4 cards in hand after the Rest in Peace, do you put him on double Force of Will? I don't know. Eric, what do you think about that? I probably made this way too complicated here.
I think what I would have done is just tried to... If he's tapping out for the Rest in Peace and you have Force of Will and the answer to Rest in Peace, I think I would just try and force the Rest in Peace, even though you have the answer, because then they're more inclined... If you're willing to fight over it with your Force of Will, I think you should force first, and then they force back thinking you don't really have an answer to it, and then you answer it on your turn. Or after they've forced your force.
Yeah, I would agree with Eric, because you basically are forcing a force check on them, right? I mean, there's no way they're going to be able to counter more than one thing if they have a Force of Will, so you just basically test them, and if you pass the test or they choose not to force back, then your coast is clear for the Renin 6.
And you chip in with the Tarmogoyf damage that the Rest in Peace will shrink your Tarmogoyf.
It's also dependent on context. I don't know what you had seen from your opponent or what had happened up to that.
Oh, nothing else. Like I played a Tarmogoyf, he played the Rest in Peace, and that's how the match had played out thus far. But yeah, so to make this less complicated, because I think I didn't explain it very well, I ended up tapping out at their end of turn to return to nature, the Rest in Peace. They had the Force of Will. I Force of Willed their Force of Will, and the last 2 cards in their hand were also Force of Will plus Pitch. So at that point, I'm looking at the Pyroblast in my hand that I can't cast because it's their end of turn, and I'm feeling so bad because had I gone to my turn, that whole interaction would have worked out very much in my favor. And they would be sitting there with 0 cards, and I would be able to cast Renin 6 next turn. As opposed to what happened in this game, I have a useless Tarmogoyf, I have a useless Renin 6, and I have no way of ever getting rid of the Rest in Peace. So maybe that's something that I should also consider, because the Return to Nature was my only card in the entire 75 that would get rid of the Rest in Peace, which is a big pain for me. Maybe I should have played it extra safe. So I think that's something I didn't consider at the time, that the Return to Nature was my only real answer. And if I lose this battle and they actually do end up having 2 Force of Wills, I get destroyed. I think that's actually the thing that I didn't factor in. Because sometimes you feel like, okay, well, I made a bad trade, but I can still cantrip my way into a removal spell and they are out of cards. No, I can't. Like, all the cards I ever draw, if I find, I don't know, Hooting Mandris, that's a 6 mana spell. And yeah, maybe I should have considered that as well. So yeah, this is basically how my day 1 ended. I played another round just for fun, pretty much, against another Blue-White Miracles players. Just so many Tundras in Beijing, which was part of my downfall, I guess. And I went in 2 very long, but also very one-sided games. It was just like one of those matches where your Miracles opponent never gets to resolve any of their card advantage spells. Like, they get to do everything except generate card advantage. So the moment you resolve one of your card advantage engines like Renin 6, you eventually just take over the game. I think, James, you took a couple of pictures of that and you watched, and it really felt like one of those games where it was super smooth sailing. You get to plus your Ren a couple of times and then turn all of that into brain. So it almost felt like playing Core back when Chase was legal.
That's right.
That felt like a very nice end to the day. That was that. And no day 2 for me. I get 30th place out of 100 players. And for day 2, we do have a side event. And James, I think you got to play into that as well. And you ended up quite successful in it. Do you remember?
Yeah, I got quite lucky in some spots. So I decided to play a deck that I had not played in 3 years, which was Death and Taxes. I basically just took XJ Cloud's list that I found on Goldfish and ran it, and ended up going 4-1 over 5 rounds in the side events. So I was really, really happy about that.
And how do you feel about Death and Taxes right now?
It's fine if you're running Giver runes and you are less affected by having 1 toughness creatures. So I would say it felt pretty good. I don't know if my matchups were what I expected to face because it was a lot of combo decks. I think I might have faced Storm, Dredge, and I can't remember all the matchups, but it was definitely matchups where I wasn't facing up against Ren and 6 every round. I also faced Burn in the first round, which is kind of like a combo deck, right? I think people have talked about Burn just basically being a Storm 6 deck. If you resolve 6 spells, you win. And so it was not a very conventional set of matchups. I wasn't playing against Rug Delver every round like people did in the main event, or yourself, Julian, playing Rug Delver every round. But I thought Death and Taxes seemed pretty good. It felt pretty smooth, and so I was pretty happy with it.
Yeah, cool. Did you actually play the 4 copies of Giver of Runes, or did you play a mix with Mother of Runes?
I played 4 copies of Giver and 0 copies of Mother.
Wow, okay, I like that. I like that. Putting your money where your mouth is. Like, I gotta beat Ren and 6, okay, this is how I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, I'm kind of like the extreme guy. So, if I'm either going to drink water or Coke, I'm not going to go for Diet Coke. I don't want to hedge. So I'm just going to go with the 4 givers,
I don't drink Diet Coke. You know what? I actually think that more people should do it like that. Not saying like in regards to how you build your deck necessarily, but in regards to how you play the game and how you're playing to win. But I guess that's something I talk about a lot, right? No middle of the road things, like commit to what you think is the right play, or in your case to what you think would make a good deck. I also played the side event. I finished it at 3-1-1. I think we got second and fourth place in the side event, which was pretty cool. I ended up losing the quote unquote finals to Burn, which is a matchup that can be quite rough for you on the Rug Diver side. And speaking of like committing really hard, I tried to beat my opponent by basically wastelanding myself as soon as the third turn and basically giving up my entire board just to make a Hooting Mandrills and have, I think, a Force and something as a backup and trying to ride it to victory. But it didn't get there. But it felt like the right play at the time. But yeah, Burn actually in general is like a pretty... I'm not even sure if it's popular, but it's certainly a successful deck in Beijing. I remember when we went last year, they had 2 copies in the top 16. And this year there were another 2 copies in the top 16 and it won the day 2 side event. So yeah, mono red in China sounds like a good plan.
Yeah, I really like Burn right now. I really like it.
Something else I want to point out. So if you want to get a good feeling about the tournament, James actually has a photo essay that we have in the show notes on its Julian.com. And you took a lot of really great pictures just to give people a feel for the atmosphere and for the vibe that's going on in the event. So definitely check that out. In speaking of the tournament itself, we had exactly 100 decks. The tournament breakdown and the metagame breakdown is going to be on my website as well. But just to give people a general idea what was going on in Beijing. So we had 21% Timur Delver decks. We had 13% Blue-White X control decks, 8% Dark Depth, 7% Ad Nauseam Tendrils, 6% Grixis and 4-color control, 5% Show and Tell, 5% Burn, and then what's labeled as 15% other fair decks and 20% other unfair decks. So what stood out to me the most, there's actually 2 things. The first one is a lot of blue-white control. We know that there's a lot of blue-white control traditionally in Legacy, but as of late, like people have been talking about the death of Tundra and how Swords of Plowshares isn't really a big thing anymore. And in part, that's certainly true, I feel. Like it's a major reason why in Rug Diver we run Hooting Mandrills over True, or at least get to run Hooting Mandrills over True Nemesis, because very few people are playing that. But I certainly got burned by the Tundra in Beijing. Do you guys see Tundra decks making a comeback? I feel like everybody's been talking about it, but I don't know. Like we see Tundra fanatics like Anorak play it at times, but I still feel like people should play more Tundras right now.
I think the deck is no less or more popular than it was around GP Atlanta and the month or so leading up to that. I think that people are splashing pretty freely with Astrolabe to fit in Oko in the deck now, in blue-white decks. So they're kind of blue-white-green, and people are finding some success with that. And I think that the people not playing Tundra thing is mostly a meme. I think that the people who like to play that super grindy, Miracles style control will there's a deck out there for them pretty much every metagame.
Yeah, I agree with that. Where there's a will, there's a way, right? So there are some players or pilots who are really into that archetype, whether it's Stoneblade or just control. And I see it everywhere. In fact, Eric, I think you said you played at the Puget Sound Battleground. I know from my friend Jeremy Edwards, also known as ESG on the Source, he says that there's actually lots of Tundra decks on the West Coast. I don't know if you found that to be the case or if you heard that, but it does seem like, I don't know if it's regional or not, but there does seem to be a fair amount of representation at events.
I mean, I wasn't looking that carefully, and I haven't seen the metagame breakdown, but yeah, I've seen a fair number of. I think, like I was saying, like people who liked Miracles and really liked it and didn't quit Legacy just because they banned Top will find a way to use their cards and play Legacy, and those decks are reasonable. So yeah, people definitely are playing them, and usually people may not really think of them as Tundra decks since they don't usually play out Tundra until like turn 5. But they're mostly basics. With Astrolabe now to splash for green, and you play Council's Judgment, you play Terminus, you play Supreme Verdict maybe, Mentor, and then there's Teferi, and yeah, there's lots of different builds with that, and they seem pretty reasonable, and they seem pretty good against the Rug Delver decks out there. I know that I struggle against the blue-white based control decks when I play Rug Delver, so
yeah, same for me. That's basically the bane of my existence, at least the way I'm building the deck right now. So maybe it's time for a change for Rug Delver to adopt the deck, because you know how the at least the thinking for a lot of people was that at least Miracles was not as viable anymore because Run and 6 was such a powerful card and they had a hard time stopping it. But the thing as well is that even though these decks that use Ren and 6, they get to utilize it pretty well, they also pair it with stuff that's traditionally pretty weak to Miracles, or rather Snapcaster Swords decks, which is actually the big thing, right? It's not the Miracles thing. And so I think that, like you mentioned, the blue-white decks are probably much more playable than people have been giving them credit for over the last couple of months. And I'm not that surprised now thinking about that to see it that well represented and also doing quite well at the Orlov event. Of course, if you look at other events that we're going to speak about later on, Rug Delver is still the number one deck to beat, but it certainly has a lot of weaknesses to anything that gets to use Snapcaster Swords, as well as a potential rest in peace from the sideboard, which we don't really have too many answers for. Another thing that stood out to me that actually made me really sad, I put like a unhappy smiley in our Google Doc. If you look closely at the way the metagame works out, all of those top decks, none of them are non-blue fair mid-range decks. Something like, well, I guess Maverick, and then you might argue over, okay, I'm gonna concede that Elves isn't fair, but something like Maverick, which is just like so close and dear to my heart, or even just like, people are gonna laugh at me, but I'm gonna say it's something like Chunt, which I think is also like not the worst deck, even though it's definitely not my kind of playstyle. It's just a little bit too clunky, I almost want to say. So if you look at those numbers, we have 15% other fair decks, and all decks on top of that are either not fair or blue. And by blue, I don't mean like I don't care about the color, but I do care about the blue play style, which is quite dominant in that regard. So I don't know. I really hope that we will see a comeback of non-fair blue mid-range, because if it's a maximum of 15% of the metagame, that's so little. I just want to see more of those intense creature battles, which I guess, Eric, you're going to disagree with me, but like the way I knew Legacy was all about creatures and creature combat and making that work. And I know that has changed over time, and I'm probably stuck somewhat in the past. Like,
wait, when was that? Was that when Zoo was around? Because that's what I remember when we had creature combat. Yeah, like I got into Legacy like in 2006, 7, and I remember when people always said, "Oh, Legacy, that's the format where you get to play creatures and interact with creatures." Whereas Standard was like quite broken for a lot of those times where people played like combo decks in Standard and Extended, and Legacy was the one format where you went to well, I always mention it, to cast Rock Swarmonk and attack with Rock Swarmonk and that kind of stuff, or even play something like Merfolk, which I guess you can still play, but it's not anywhere close to what it used to be. So I
know Legacy has changed, and I think we're just coming out of a period where Legacy is heavily dominated by blue control decks, which, funnily enough to me, I was always told, oh, blue control, that's not viable in Legacy. Like, you can play it, but the format's just too powerful for a control deck to actually really thrive. So, yeah, that's just like my bias. I don't know. I guess another fair deck, non-blue fair deck, would be Death in Texas, which traditionally, at least in the West, has always been like one of the most played decks. And looking at this metagame breakdown, it seems to be almost non-existent, which makes me really sad. I don't know, James, we're probably not going to see you at Bologna, but you would definitely be carrying the flag for Death in Texas if you were here, right? I think you dabbled a little bit with Dark Depth and played it at the GP. But is Death in Texas really the deck you would play?
No, I mean, if it was a larger event, I'd probably be going with Dark Depths. I have been playing,
That's the guy who's not playing Elves in Bologna.
No, I've been playing Dark Depths at weeklies and in Legacy paper events since March, and basically from March all the way to September, I was trying to make a 2020 every tournament I played in. I played GP Atlanta and SCG Syracuse with Dark Depths. Didn't do super well, but that was a deck that I thought was pretty good, but I think the metagame sort of caught on to it. And so, I mean, I don't claim to be the most skilled player in the world or anything, not as accomplished as you guys, as I said, but I just felt like the deck had a lot of difficulty, and there's also a level of inbreeding that was happening within Dark Depths mirrors where, you know, that you were able to go over the top of other Dark Depths decks if you were a certain type of deck. So it felt pretty hard, and I'm always of the opinion that in Legacy you just want to sidestep a lot of the grindiness, and so when you start playing a combo deck and it starts getting too grindy, that's when I feel like I should move in another direction.
Okay, fair enough. And speaking of combo decks that can be really grindy, we already spoke about it. Haubo actually ended up winning his own tournament. Mr. Orlov took down the Orlov 10K playing Bug Food Chain with 4 Gilded Goose. And we talked to him about it after the event, and he specifically mentioned that this is a concession to Ren 6. And for those, like, it's not the biggest Legacy staple who don't know what Gilded Goose does. It's a 1/2, which is the most important thing for a green, and when it comes to play, it produces food. And you can tap it and sacrifice a food to add, I think it's a mana of any color to the board, and you can also, I think, for 2 mana tap it and create a food token. So it's basically like a one-shot, which creature produces mana of any kind. It's basically like a one-shot Deathrite Shaman, I want to say, that gets to survive.
It's actually 0/2, so it has no power, but then again, you're never going to really want to attack with it anyway. It has flying as well.
Okay, so you know what? Little stuff like that can actually be sometimes relevant, right? If you just need that extra turn to block that Dark Depth token, that Marrowed Larch. So I'm still not fully on board. I love it when my mana dudes just like tap all the time. But Haubo certainly made it work, and I think other than that, let me pull up the list. It's pretty stock, pretty straightforward list. I guess he has got 2 Hydrate Cresses, which is another way to kill when you have infinite mana with Food Chain, while also playing a creature that's, well, I guess decent. Hasn't really done too much in Legacy, but if you have a little bit of mana, you can certainly use it for that.
I hate to use hyperbole, but this deck is super well positioned if you expect to face Rug Delver every round, because he actually told me that out of the many rounds of Magic he played, he might have played against Rug Delver almost every round, including against you, right? And
yeah,
it's practically a buy for him in this type of matchup.
Yeah, it was interesting to me that he mentioned that Submerge isn't actually all that great against him, because you know how Rug Delver these days plays 2 or 3 Submerges pretty much all the time, and it feels like a card you definitely bring in because you still have stuff to take out. But I also certainly noticed, even though he plays actually a one-off Gurmag Angler only, I didn't really get as much value out of it as I wanted. Like, you don't really want to submerge an Ice Fang Hodl, I guess, even though it's okay. And he just clumped up the board so much that my submergers couldn't really provide any kind of decent tempo. So, I mean, I've liked Food Chain in the past, and maybe people should be experimenting with it a little bit more. I mean, it always has that built-in problem of performing the combo of Magic Online. That's why decks like Food Chain or also sometimes Bomberman don't get as much representation or testing online, so it's not put into the public eye as much. But Haubo certainly made it work for him in Beijing, so wouldn't be surprised to see more of this deck in the future.
Yeah, it's obviously a dog against faster combo, but it's pretty good against the fair decks for obvious reasons.
And speaking of fast combo decks, oh my god, now we get a special one. We got Yeats. That's a friend of yours, right? From Beijing, actually originally from Turkey, who's been living in Beijing for quite a while now. Whom you introduced me to, really nice guy. Actually ended up inviting us for dinner on the last night, which was really nice of him. So if you're listening, Yeet, hey, thank you very much. Xixie. And he was playing what people call Ice Station Zebra. Do you guys have any idea why the deck is called that?
Obscure Legacy reference 102. I have no idea.
I was gonna say I'm ready to hear this. I think I've seen it explained, and I kind of rolled my eyes. So no offense to anybody who explained it. I don't remember.
That's always the best, is when you hear the explanation and then you don't actually care for the explanation. So it just goes out 1 year, it goes into 1 year and goes out the other. That's how I felt too. I don't remember either.
Isn't Ice Station Zebra? Okay, so there's different versions of Tin Fins Depths. Isn't that what it is? It's just Tin Fins and Depths.
Exactly, yeah.
And then
I like that name, actually. Why don't we just go with that?
Yeah, so some people call it Ice Station Zebra, and there's some reason, and I heard it once and I can't remember.
It tells you a lot about Legacy players, but when we feel like, okay, Tin Fins is just obscure enough of a name that we can agree on that, but Ice Station Zebra is just like way too much out there. The thing I've heard about it is that apparently like Tin Fins is based on some children's TV show. Okay, I could be totally wrong here, but that's what I heard. And then apparently there's a zebra, or I wouldn't know what an Ice Station Zebra is, but apparently there's a zebra involved as well. So now that they have added the Dark Depths combo, it becomes an Ice Station Zebra Tin Fins. I don't know. I'm sure somebody in the comments will be able to explain this to us. Once we finish this cast, I'm definitely going to Google Ice Station Zebra, and there's probably like 5 different explanations. Just the Nick Fit way, how people have like different ways.
I'm still trying to figure out Nick Fit, man. So as soon as I figure that one out, I'll come back to this.
You know what? Your next book is going to be about that. Nick Fit, The Uncovery or something. CSI Nick Fit.
Understanding Nick Fit. That's going to be my next book.
Oh my God.
It literally is just play bad cards. That's what it's going to be, one page. But anyway, shout out to Matt Pavlik.
Oh my God. If Matt hears this, actually, I guess that's just like the thing that Matt has adopted. He's just brewing with a ton of, I don't even want to say questionable cards, because I just completed a 5-0 league with, what's it called? Shifting Ceratops, which is a card that I would bet Matt is very fond of. Shifting Ceratops, Questing Beast, those are the kinds of cards that I would associate with him. But yeah, Ice Station Zebra. We already talked about it. It's basically a Tin Fins deck that also has the Dark Depth combo in it. So as that, it's a little bit slower than most Tin Fin decks, but probably not by much. And it has the added backup of sometimes just making the 20/20 and killing your opponent that way, which makes it so hard to play against, because first of all, you don't even know whether it's actually Ice Station Zebra or Tin Fins. Could be straight up Tin Fins, or it could be Ice Station Zebra. So it puts you in this weird spot, especially in the first game, unless you, I guess, scouted your opponent, where you don't really know how exactly to play against it. I think most people would just ignore the Dark Depth combo in the first game, because unless you're like a deck that has tons of ways of interacting with it, you're just trying to beat them the regular way. And on top of that, the deck is not only super fast like Tin Fins, it's also a little bit more resilient. It plays, I think, it plays 3 Living Wishes, which gives you extra access to all different combo pieces, as well as a couple of utility cards. And he told me a lot of times he actually ends up winning by Laboratory Maniac. So even if you get something down like, say, I think Ensnaring Bitch. I think I actually saw him win straight through Ensnaring Bitch, just because Children of Khalees is going to give you so much life that you can basically draw your entire deck, get the Laboratory Maniac down, and win on the very same turn. So having our resident Grizzlebrand expert on the show tonight, again, Eric, have you tried this deck before, or have you stayed true to Black Red Reanimator when it comes to Grizzlebranding?
Actually, believe it or not, Tin Fins Depths is what was the first Grizzlebrand deck I ever played. This Ice Station Zebra deck was the first time I ever played a Reanimator deck in Legacy.
Is that how you got hooked on Grizzlebrand?
Well, okay, so I saw the very first iteration of this deck that I saw was by Clone 109 on MTGO, and you got like a 5-0, and this was like in 2015 or something. I saw there was no depths in the deck at the time, or maybe there was. There was Dark Depths, and there was Entomb, and there was Gristlebrand, and there was LED, and there was Laboratory Maniac, and I was like, what in the world is this pile of cards, and how does this make any sense at all? I didn't get it. And so I thought, wow, well, he 5-0'd with it. I'll just try it on Magic Online, and then I quickly understood that it was what it was trying to do was do the Tin Fins thing where Lab Maniac is your way of winning on the same turn. I didn't get it just on paper, but when I played it, I figured it out. And then I've told this story a bunch of times, but then I had a lot of the cards, but not like the LEDs in paper. So I went to my local game store, and I was looking in their binders, and I saw Lake of the Dead, and I was just like, why don't I just put Lake of the Dead in the deck instead of LED, and I'll put in a Grave Titan as well, and so I'll have like Reanimator Depths, and I just cut the Tin Fins part, so I won't win the same turn, but I'll just be Reanimator Depths, and then I had a lot of success with that. I even got Bob to play it for a long time, and we both were winning a lot on Magic Online. And yeah, that's how I first started reanimating in Legacy. And then after that I tried Reanimator, Black Red Reanimator.
Straight up Black Red Reanimator. So I wonder whether this deck is actually much better than everybody of us realizes, right? I mean, you played it and you've been very successful with it, and apparently Bob has done the same. You don't really get to see the deck played a lot. Like, there's nobody streaming it. There's hardly anyone ever putting up results with it, but that could be just a function of nobody playing it. So I think I actually want to try this in Magic Online right now. But I guess not right now, because it's like 1:30 in the morning for me, and I still haven't fully adjusted to German time. But yeah, this is something else. And Yeet also told us, right? He doesn't really get to play a lot right now, and he still made top 4. Actually, he got very close to the finals. So maybe there's more than people see in the deck. I think it's slightly faster than Black Red Reanimator, but it's also a little bit less resilient. But I guess it has the Dark Depth combo. Actually, you know what? This deck is fascinating. I want to try it.
Oh, I was going to say, I think it's about a turn slower than Black Red Reanimator, but more resilient because you have 2 angles.
Oh yeah, because of the added Dark Depth angle. Yeah, I was probably more thinking in terms of the original Tin Fins, which is a deck I played something like 6 or 7 years ago, which was super fast. Like if you got Grizzlebrand on turn 2, you were also like behind schedule. Yeah. But with this one, yeah, good point. I think I'm gonna try it out. I don't really get to stream a lot these days, and I think my next stream is gonna be Dinosaur Stompy, which is a deck that actually, Eric, you had a confrontation with last night on the IPL.
Yes.
Maybe you can speak about that a little bit later. But yeah, that's Yeet's deck. Ice Station Zebra, super cool, super fast, and also super good backup plan. Like, if your backup plan is making a 20/20 flying indestructible, you know your primary plan is probably really strong.
And it can do that pretty easily with like an LED. You just play out an LED and a Dark Depths and a stage, and you have that on turn 2.
Yes, that happens definitely.
Yeah, it's actually pretty straightforward. I love that. Another deck that I wanted to point out is, I guess, James, you can help me with the pronunciation. I want to give the players some representation, not only like that dude, but I'm very bad at pronunciation. Is it Shen Tan?
Zhen Tan. Yeah. You got it.
Yeah, okay, cool. my Mandarin is getting to it. Like, I cannot say more than thank you right now. Cool. So it's basically blue-white, very minor splash black control, but it's very different from any of those lists that I've ever seen before. So basically the creature suit is just 2 Snapcaster Mages, and then we play 9 Planeswalkers. It's 3 Narsets, 3 Karn the Great Creator, Teferi Time Raveler, and 2 copies of Sahidi Sublime Artificer. For those of you who don't know what the card does, it's a 3-mana Planeswalker with 5 loyalty. You can cast it for a colorless, and then there's a hybrid blue-red and a blue-red. It has a static ability. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token, and for -2, target artifact you control becomes a copy of another target artifact creature you control until end of turn. Except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. Actually, I'm thinking about, what does it actually do? It becomes a copy. So it must interact with something from the sideboard, because this deck doesn't have any other creatures. So it can either like only copy its own creatures or copy artifacts that it can get from the sideboard. So I guess you could turning creatures into astrolapes doesn't really make sense. I actually wonder, is this really just Can you guys help me out? I'm actually not fully understand. Is it really just a deck for the passive ability?
Hold on. It makes tokens when they cast spells. Yeah, it's like a young pyromancer. It can copy Snapcaster Mage too, I think.
It can copy Snapcaster Mage, but it does. You don't get the comes to play ability, right? So it's just like a 2/1.
Okay, well then it's like a young pyromancer on a planeswalker.
So is that the entire idea? Okay, that's interesting. I was wondering whether there's more to it, but yeah, I think that's.
Well, you can copy another artifact, and he's got a whole board of artifacts that he can tutor for with Karn, right?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna get to. But for the main deck, okay. I'm wondering whether there's anything I'm missing, but I think there's nothing.
He doesn't have any. It's his win condition. Like, other than he's got Karn and Snapcaster Mage, and that's it. So it's also Saheeli's another win condition. It's
that's probably the main.
It's like a young pyromancer. So every time he casts a spell, it's a token. So it's like a mentor young pyromancer, but it doesn't die to a lightning bolt or whatever.
Or the 2 Supreme Verdicts that he's running. And it also doesn't get turned off by Humility, which is also one off in the deck.
Yeah, and also the like off chance that you want to copy something could come up.
Yeah, of course. Like if you grab something from the sideboard, like James mentioned, right? And I think there's actually interesting cards that he can grab from the sideboard. But let's finish the main deck first. So other than that, it plays what people would call the blue soup, I guess these days. The Ponder, Brainstorm, Spray Pierce, Swords of Plowshare, Supreme Verdict, Force of Will, and also Arcum's Astrolabe. And the Arcum's Astrolabe is actually important because Karn can grab 2 black artifacts from the sideboard, well, Baleful Strix and Tide Hollow Scholar, which this deck can only cast by using the Arcum's Astrolabe. So I guess if you turn all of your 1/1 tokens that you make into Baleful Strix, that's actually a nice way to basically stonewall the opponent and like stop them from attacking. I'm just a little bit flabbergasted by this deck because I've really not seen anything like this before, because it's playing 4 copy of Stifle, which for a control deck is very unusual. Like the last time we've seen Stifle effects played in a control deck wasn't like some variants of like Landstill. At this point, it's like 12 years ago or something. But this guy's playing 4 copies, so
whatever he's doing, it's obviously working, because I'm looking it up right now, and he finished 7th place.
Yeah. I think he's just thinking of it as a very much like a young pyromancer. So he wants a lot of cheap spells to go along with his win condition.
Yeah, he's also playing 2 Ancient Tombs to power out those Planeswalkers, which are probably like quite important to his strategy. So yeah, if you're looking for a new take on blue-white control and you like Planeswalkers, you like the Super Friends playstyle, definitely check that list out. It's also going to be it's on Goldfish already, and I'm also going to have a link to it on my website. The last deck that I want to point out is, let me put up the place. The place is 16th place.
Oh, this is Yu Chen, right? Is this the opponent that you actually faced that in your report?
Yes, that's the person I lost to in the 3rd round. And they are playing blue-green Omnitel. And this list is quite something else. It plays 3 Veil of Summer in the main deck, and even more so interestingly, 4 copies of Drawn from Dreams in the main deck. And for those of you who don't know what Drawn from Dreams does, I called it the 2 fish card because there's 2 fish in the artwork. It's basically the fixed dig through time. It's a sorcery for 2 colorless and 2 blue. And you get to look at the top 7 cards of your library and put any 2 cards from those into your hand and the rest of the bottom of your library in a random order. So this deck, or this card, does 2 things for the deck. First of all, if it's a grindy game, you can cast it just to gain card advantage and also like very good selection. And second of all, it will very likely give you a win if you ever get Omniscience into play. So it fills the same role that Dig Through Time did for the old Omnitel decks. And while also being like not dead outside of the combo, which is kind of nice, even though 4 mana is quite a lot to ask for. And then, of course, the 3 Veil of Summers to protect your combo and hopefully make sure that gets to resolve. Have you seen something like that, Eric?
Yes, actually, this looks really familiar. Makes me wonder if they're a fan of my stream. Mostly the Veil of Summers, but it's pretty straightforward. I played something on stream like this a little while ago. The only difference is that I didn't play any Drown of Dreams. I haven't played that card. That card seems, like you said, quite clunky if you're not casting off Omniscience. But I also played 2 copies of Eureka. So you have, I think that's actually pretty good way to approach this deck, because one of the issues with this deck is that it, compared to Sneak and Show, is that this deck can be surgical, and if they surgical your Show and Tell, you have almost no way to win the game. And Eureka bypasses that and also just gives you a third or fifth and sixth copy of Show and Tell for the deck. But yeah, I played it and I thought it was I thought it was pretty good.
Interesting. I was wondering when I played against him whether there would be any Eurekas, because if you see green, right, that's the first card that comes to your mind. But this seems to be straight up Show and Tell, just nothing other than that. I guess Veil of Summer also helps with not being discarded. Like if you face something like a Thoughtseize on turn 5 and you have Spell Pierce, which I guess would, or Flusterstorm, which usually goes into that slot, you can't really do too much about it. But Veil of Summer protects you and makes sure that it's going to be much harder for the opponent to actually surgically your Show and Tells. So I can see the appeal. But honestly, like every time you show me a blue-green deck, I'm already sold, even though this is not exactly the kind of playstyle I want to play. I just feel like blue-green go well together, and it's probably my favorite color combination. But that's more on the what would that be? Vartos? No, not Vartos. Definitely not on the Spike side of things. Oh, like blue-green. Okay, cool. Let's play anything.
One more thing I'd like to say about it with the Veil of Summer. So the Veil of Summer, in the past, that spot would have been like a Spell Pierce or a Flusterstorm, like you had said, and it is, at least compared to Spell Pierce, it is so much better at helping you resolve your combo because of what you also mentioned, how it can protect against discard spells, and it's also insanely good against Storm, so it has those upsides. But the downside of it is there are some matchups where it does actually nothing. It's just a blank green card, and you're playing a Wish sideboard, so it's really hard to sideboard it out.
True. And unlike other cards that are sometimes dead in decks like this, you can't even pitch them before stuff. So, like you said, it's literally gonna sit there and look embarrassing. But yeah, that's a payoff, right? You want power. Sometimes that means you will also face inconsistency. So yeah, that's. I don't want to like quickly jump into the next tournament. I just want to say Beijing was a really great experience, and if you guys want to find out more about the event, you can hit up James, you can hit up me, or I guess you can also ask Eric on a stream about it. He's been there last year. If we could get even more international players to hit that event, and like the money is there to be won, maybe you combine it with a vacation in China. I just want to put it out there because the tournament series really means a lot to me. So thanks for the great event. I know, James, you mentioned you're involved with the organization, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the next year, or probably like seeing you personally earlier, but seeing you in Beijing again next year.
Yeah, definitely. I look forward to it. Look forward to having people join us.
Looking forward to a couple of other events that will be really big in 2012, especially following SEG's drop of Legacy. I think the biggest events around, at least in North America right now, should be the Eternal Weekend. There was an Eternal Weekend very recently. I think, Eric, you didn't end up going. I know that Bob also didn't go. So actually none of us went to that tournament. So yeah, the way I want to talk about these, I combined the Eternal Weekend and the big Legacy PTQ on Magic Online, results-wise, and what we see there from the top 8 is that there's a lot of blue-red Delver, actually. So there's Rug Delver as well. There's actually lots of Rug Delver, and a lot of those decks, both Rug Delver as well as blue-red Delver, have adopted Stifle. And we've seen Stifle in those decks in the past, but it usually used to be, at least as of like the last couple of months, the exception. Most people played a pretty stock list. But now Stifle seems to be pretty big, as well as Dreaded Arcanist, which I guess is natural because that's the creature you play in Blue-Red Delver because you don't really have Tarmogoyf for any of the other green things to do. I'm just somewhat surprised because to me it seems like those Blue-Red Delver decks seem to try and go under Rug Delver, which I guess makes sense, right? Those Rug Delver decks have been trying to beat each other for a while by implementing some greedier things and pushing the deck into the other direction. And now Blue-Red Delver comes in super aggressively and like gonna stifle your mana. You want to play all these quote unquote expensive spells, like in Legacy 3 mana is expensive, right? Yeah, you're not gonna get that. Sorry. Turn 1 Delver, turn 2 Stifle Days, Wasteland, whatever. So how do you guys feel about Blue-Red Delver? I've honestly, like, I personally have never been too much of a friend of the deck, but I know that some people have been working on it a lot. Actually, James, didn't like one of your friends just published a pretty good article about the deck?
Yeah, I helped him publish it. So it's Jeremy Edwards, also known as ESG, on Elvish Spirit Guide on MTG The Source. He recently played in the Mox 4K as well as the Puget Sound Battleground, and he had been playing Blue-Red Delver for a while. Although his list was very unique. It actually ran 4 Brazen Borrowers instead of some of the other traditional cards. Is actually quite intriguing. That's why I posted a report. So if you want to check that out, you can go to writtenbyjames.com. You can check out the report that I posted on his behalf. But tangent aside, yes, I think it is a pretty decent deck right now, but I think it does struggle against the most dominant deck in the format. And so I don't know how to feel about it, because it's just very challenging sometimes to beat the number 1 deck in the format with that deck.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, I played against Blue-Red Delver with Rug Delver before, and it felt, I don't want to say pretty good, but good, decent for me, unless they had some haymakers like Blood Moon when you don't expect them. That's how they got me a couple of times. But I've never actually played against Blue-Red Delver with Stifles, and I could see that being a big problem, because if you ever get stifled, and like even just on the second turn, that's definitely gonna be a big problem. So I don't want to say I'm scared of playing against that kind of deck, but I'm definitely intrigued to see how it's gonna work out. I guess that's the confident way of saying I'm scared.
Sure. I mean, there's always games where they can just get you with a stifle or whatnot, but I don't know about the overall consistency of it. Now, obviously, we're looking at reports now where, we're looking at these results where they're doing quite well, so something must be working for them. I just don't know what the optimal build is. Maybe you guys can speak more about that, and you guys have more experience or have faced this deck a little bit more than I have.
My thinking on it is, when I first saw it, I was a little bit surprised to see so many. I think that there might be some, that's just random circumstance that 3 of them made it in the top 8 in one weekend and no Rug Delvers. But I do think that I thought they were built to fight against Rug Delver, even though, because you have this ability to. So a lot of the Delver mirrors feel like whoever can get 3 lands to stick in play and be able to cast their spells through dazes and things like that is way ahead. And this deck plays basics and stifles, so it kind of wins that land game. And then you have like Young Pyromancer and True Name to blink Tarmogoyfs, and so then you really only need to. Yeah, I mean, that's just a really good way to fight against Tarmogoyf and Renin 6, is that your lands aren't wastelandable, and your threats, although Young Pyromancer can die to Renin 6, but I mean, once you've gone wide, it's a little bit difficult to deal with.
Yeah, I was thinking the same, right? That especially the Stifle lists are trying to exploit how mana hungry Rug Delver really is. Like, it's not your traditional super lean Delver deck. It's actually, Jarvis called it a chunt deck in disguise, I almost want to say, just because it's so good at mid-range game. And with that, of course, comes the necessity of having a lot of lands in play. And if you get, like I mentioned, right, if you get Stifled on the second turn, it's really going to be or potentially devastating against a deck that can play a very aggressive game like Blue-Red Delver. So if that's something down your alley, you maybe want to try it out and give the Stifle list a try, just because the results certainly speak for them. And we know sometimes, just like even a dice roll can be the difference between making top 8 or top 16, which gets your list published or not. But on average, seeing so many Blue-Red Delver decks with Stifle doing well recently, it's definitely something you probably want to try.
It just feels good right now to be running a deck with basics and has a fairly fast clock. And not to mention, Blue-Red Delver can be built in a way where it is kind of a evolved version of Burn with a little bit better card advantage and card quality. So I can definitely see that going in its favor.
Yeah. Another big tournament. Hey, actually, if you think about it, like the last 4 weeks have given us a lot of great legacy tournaments. So I guess so much for legacy is that all around the world we still get these really big events. Just in Japan, they had they call it the 15th God of Legacy event with almost 200 players, 83 players, and they had a very interesting top 8. Their tournament was actually won by another Canadian Threshold deck, and that deck looked pretty straightforward to me, I guess. Yeah, they're committing pretty hard to Hooting Mandrills with 3 copies, as well as 3 copies of Thoughtscore. So it's almost like a Turbo Mandrills deck. And like I mentioned, this is what you want to do if you don't really expect a lot of Swords to Plowshares, because the alternative to running Hooting Mandrills usually is True Name Nemesis, which is a way to blank Swords to Plowshares. But Hooting Mandrills overall is just a so much better card. You get it down for 1 mana. It tramples over a lot of other things, including True Name Nemesis. So yeah, this looks like a list that's very much pushed towards, hey, you guys are not going to show up with Swords to Plowshares. But the deck that I actually want to talk about that looked the most interesting to me is the A&T list in second place. And that list plays 3 copies of Wishclaw Talisman. If you don't know what that is, that's the artifact that was recently printed, which is basically a demonic tutor. But where is it? No, it went away. Okay, there it is. So that card basically is a demonic tutor that's a little bit slower because it comes into play with 3 wish counters, and then if you tap it for colorless and remove a wish counter from it, you get to search your library for any card, and your opponent gains control of the card. So I guess the card you actually want to compare it to is more like what's the tutor that nobody plays anymore that makes you
Grim
lose
Tutor.
3 life? Grim Tutor, exactly. The card that costs probably a couple $100 by now. The upside, of course, that this card has is, which I actually like a lot that I initially didn't think about, is you can actually play this and it can never get discarded. Because you know how when you play against Storm, sometimes the correct way is to not hit their mana, but actually hit their business spells. So they sit there and can do nothing until they find another Infernal Tutor. This one, you can actually play out aggressively, and you don't even need to use it right away, right? You can just sit there and eventually accumulate a lot of mana sources and go off that way, which makes it somewhat weird for your opponent, because now when you have Wishclaw Talisman and your opponent plays, for example, lots of discard spells and Abrupt Decay, which a lot of people do you keep in your Abrupt Decays for the Wishclaw Talisman? Probably not, right? Because it's such a dead card against Storm. On the other hand, if you play a lot of discards, then you could see that blanked if your opponent plays Wishclaw Talisman, because if you taking a Dark Ritual doesn't feel as great as taking a business spell if your opponent is already sitting a lot of mana. So I wonder if that's something that more people will adopt in the future. If you guys been playing I think James, you've played some Storm in the past, right? Haven't you?
Yeah, I like this list. It looks like the Talisman is essentially replacing the extra copies of Dark Petition and or Grim Tutor, because it's pretty standard to have the 4 Infernal Tutors. That goes without saying, but anything beyond that, it looks like this player has elected to use the Talismans instead. So I see that as being a pretty good choice, and for the reasons you said as well, it's you can somewhat protect it by just running it out.
Eric, have you played against any of those Wishclaw Talisman decks in the past? I've seen people even combine it with Guardian Beast, which is kind of cool, which I guess gives it back to you.
Yeah, I've seen some Wishclaw Talisman combos that are mostly built for fun, but I think that this is getting pretty heavily adopted in Storm lists. I usually see 2 copies. I like.
Oh,
that.
You do 2 copies, really? I must be behind the metagame then.
I
thought this was like brand new.
2 copies, yeah, in some lists. There's different lists going around right now. Some people are playing Empty in the main. Some people are playing Chromox. A lot of people are playing Wishclaw Talisman, but not everybody. I played against Rodrigo, I think today, and he played the other one that you mentioned, the 5-mana one.
Dark Petition.
Yeah, Dark Petition. But I know that Cyrus was trying Wishclaw. I'm not sure what his final thoughts on it were, though. But the upside of it is basically that yes, you get to dump mana into it a turn ahead of time. So it costs extra. It's 1 more mana than your 2-mana rituals, but I mean your 2-mana tutors. But you get to invest your mana when you want to, rather than all at the same turn. But then the downside is it's like much worse against stuff like Null Rod, which is already quite good against you, and Abrupt Decays in game 1s and things like that. So.
Yeah, I was going to mention, right, if this card actually becomes even more widely adopted in Storm, then if your deck can afford it, you probably really want to run Nilrod in the sideboard. I know, for example, that Chavez says he almost always runs just like a one-off Nilrod in most of its creature-based sideboards, just because it's such an efficient card against Storm. And with Wishclaw Talisman in the mix, it gets even better. Something else that I saw in the list is this one has 2 Veil of Summer in the main deck, as well as another copy of Veil of Summer in the sideboard. Veil of Summer card recently banned in the Pioneer format, and it really, really makes its presence known in A&T. People talk about how it's good against the deck, which is true as well, but I think overall, it feels like Storm Pilots are actually happy for the printing of the card, even though it's supposed to be good against them. So I guess that's some kind of double-edged sword there.
I think we reached a point in the format where you should not be surprised to see Veil Summer main deck versus combo decks anymore, right? We just talked about the Omni Show deck and Omnitel deck, and now we're talking about this deck. I mean, you can think of it as a dead card, but to be honest, like the cards that actually hurt you can counter with Veil Summer. So if you're a combo deck, it seems like a good time to be running this in the main or running 3 or 4 copies in the 75.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, right? If Veil of Summer is ever dead, you're actually happy because you're up against a deck where
you probably already won, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, you're using it to protect what you have.
And it has an elf in the artwork, so it must be a really good card.
I will say I heard somewhere on the internet, this is hearsay, I don't really know, but that this deck list has a mistake in it, and that there aren't supposed to be 2 Veil Summers in the main, but that there is supposed to be 1. I think that's what I heard. This is 61 cards, and I think that's not supposed to be that way.
Ah, okay. So actually, let me count the sideboard. 3, 5, 7,
no, it's 15.
9,
it's
10,
15 the sideboard.
15?
But
okay,
61
so
main deck is Eric's point.
Yeah, I think that I read that somebody's. I read on I think it was Twitter that the deck builders said there was a mistake on the website showing an extra card in the main deck, but I could be wrong about that. So
but then again, they're Japanese players' lists, and you never know because
that's true.
I always, Japanese lists. It's always the case where you see a 0 of become a 1 of, and you see a 4 of become a 3 of. So you never know.
I think I like the idea of Veil of Summer for sure, in Storm and any combo deck like you mentioned. You can even play it out, and if they don't counter it, then you're like, okay, now I get to do whatever I want.
James, you should actually write an article or a book about like cultural things about how to build legacy decks. I know that for a long time you used to say, for example, in Europe people play a lot more Storm. In the US, everybody's playing Stoneblade. In Japan, everybody's like playing crazy lists and tweaking the numbers. I remember when they tried to make Dead Drop a thing, and for a while, like all the Japanese lists had Dead Drop in the deck, which for most people who probably wouldn't know it, I think it's like 8 in the black or 9 in the black, and it's basically like double Diabolic Edict on the opponent. They get to sacrifice 2 creatures. So yeah, that card didn't really make it all the way to us, but it's a very Japanese thing to have that card somewhere.
I would write something like that, but I would be afraid of upsetting way too many people, so I'd have to just keep it on the podcast.
Okay, just between you and me, nobody's gonna listen to this. Yeah. Also interesting that they have a snow-covered forest in the sideboard, which I can only really think must be to cast Veil of Summer, I guess.
I noticed that too.
Or I guess Carpet of but yeah, once you get Carpet of Flowers down, it's not really that big of a thing. I was just surprised to see snow-covered forest.
This might be like this player's version of Grape Shot, just for showing off. I don't know, like maybe he just wants to run 14 sideboard cards.
I hope that the deck doesn't have a mistake, and it really is 61 cards, and there's a forest in the sideboard.
Yeah, there you go.
Sweet list for sure. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, this is basically sums up everything that has happened in Legacy over the last couple of weeks worldwide. I actually really enjoyed that we get to talk about tournaments from both Asia as well as the United States. And now we have a lot of big events in Europe coming up. We have the Card Market Series in Prague coming up. There's also going to be a lot of tournaments in Italy leading up to GP Bologna. There's the Four Seasons event that Eric is going to attend, GP Bologna itself. So really looking forward to that. And yeah, it sucks that SCG dropped their support for Legacy, but what can you do about it, right? It's not something that we can really change here. And I don't know, like if you live on the West Coast, it probably like there's not too much changing for you anyways. I saw a lot of people actually bringing up how good their local Legacy community is and how they're having all these tournaments. And I don't know, like to me, that's just like, you can I don't even want to bash the people who complain, right? If you feel like it sucks, then definitely go complain and make your voice known, because that's like how you do it, and you just like show what you want to the people providing it, and hopefully you get it. But other than that, just enjoy the format and have a good time. Like I just went to my Tuesday night legacy that we have, and I think something like 8 or 10 people, more like 8 people showed up, and we just like had a great time. And at the core, that's what it was always about to me. And I only then got into competitive Magic, and I think you still get to play competitive Magic, even if it's just like the odd event, like 1 or 2 or 3 times a year. But did you really go to more tournaments? I don't know about you guys. Like I usually play something like 2 or 3 really big legacy events in the year these days. I used to play more when I was grinding really hard, but I think that's not true for most players. So I still feel there's definitely going to be big tournaments, even if they're not SCG events. So I don't know how you feel about that.
So my thoughts on this is that you can't really understate the cultural impact of SCG. So even though a lot of players have not actually gone to the SCGs, the fact they have the coverage, they dictate a lot of the market forces behind legacy cards and vintage cards. I think that cannot be understated. That is actually an important part of the format, even if you don't physically go to a tournament, you're actually watching it. Having said that, though, I do feel like, and I think you two are the best to talk to about this, I feel like Legacy can really be kept alive, really from a grassroots perspective, playing the weeklies in your local scene, but more importantly, just keeping it alive online. I think it seems to me, at least right now, there's a very vibrant Magic Online community, and people are trying all kinds of innovations in Legacy on Magic Online. And so I think if people are willing to get into playing online more and getting better and leveling up and really following online results, I think that will keep the format going, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, Eric, how do you feel about that being based on the West Coast? Does this influence you outside, of course, the cultural effects the cultural influence that James mentioned, where there's going to be a lack of coverage, I guess?
Well, okay. They haven't really done much legacy coverage for a few years now. I definitely was disappointed that they completely cut it, but I'm more interested to see if Wizards does any GPs this year. If they don't do any, then I'm concerned about the future of competitive or semi-competitive Legacy. Magic Online, like James said, is a really great place to actually play Legacy, and there are PTQs and stuff, so that's pretty cool. But if they don't do any GPs and SCG cut it, then we're gonna be it's gonna be sad times for Legacy. But I'm not too worried until we see the rest of the year's schedule from Wizards GP schedule.
Do we actually get to know who decides the format of a GP? Is it Wizards or is it Channel Fireball?
I'm not sure, but yeah, that's what I'm more interested in. As long as there's still a couple, 1 or 2, I would be happy with. But if there's 0 and there's 0 SCG, then people are going to lose interest in Legacy, I think, a little bit. Not totally, but the price is high and there aren't big events and things like that. But I will also say, very shortly after, I think it was the next day after SCG announced that they weren't doing Legacy tournaments, they tweeted out that due to the increased demand from EDH, that they have increased their buy list price of dual lands.
Yeah, that's what I said, right? EDH killed the Legacy Star.
Yeah.
So people were like talking about how the huge increase of dual land prices over the last 5 or 6 years was actually heavily based on EDH. Pretty much like I can't even say casual players, because the people are very dedicated to playing EDH who are playing it. So I wonder how much that actually was part of the impact, because SEG like axing Legacy and then instantly raising their buy list prices for the most central cards to Legacy was quite interesting.
Yeah. I don't know what to think of that. I personally wouldn't buy list my dual lands to SCG, but that was true before they axed the format.
Uh-huh. So before we conclude tonight's show, I gotta say, fuck, Eric, dude, you were absolutely spot on when we were talking about Pioneer on one of the previous casts. I remember when you suggested that mono green devotion or like devotion decks in general would be a big thing in Pioneer, and Bob and I like had to actually stop ourselves from laughing too much. I'm actually feeling embarrassed about how much I had to laugh about that prediction, because I felt like, whoa, dude, this is way out there. So how do we like disagree with Eric without offending him? And turns out Mono Green Devotion actually put the most cards on the banned list, on the first cards banned in Pioneer right now. So,
and it's still the
for
best
those of you who don't know, yeah, Leyland of Abundance, Oath of Nissa, and now also Veil of Summer were banned, along with Felidar Guardian, which is part of the Zahedi combo. Eric, is this the kind of deck you had on mind? Because I actually really thought you meant some kind of like, can't even say mid-range deck, because the deck is somewhat mid-rangey. Is this the deck that you had in mind when you said that it's gonna be really good?
I was thinking, well, I mean, there's mono green
yes.
Devotion, and there's mono. I was thinking mono green, mono red, and probably mono black are going to be. I think that there are multiple Devotion decks, and I think people are playing other ones as well. This one was the best one, but my point was Devotion's boring.
Yeah, playing against it, I certainly had the same feeling. Like, I kind of like what they get to do with all that mana that they're producing really quickly, but it certainly gets old after a couple of games. I was playing Green Black Elves, which also feels a little bit one-trick pony almost, because most of the games that you end up winning are through a Shaman of the Pack, or even just collected company for 2 copies of Shaman of the Pack. Ooh, take 18, GG. It's a fun deck, and I actually found quite a bit of success with it, if I may say, considering how nobody apparently seems to be playing the deck. I got a couple of like 3-2s and 4-1s, no 5-0s, unfortunately. But yeah, the big deck in the format right now seems to be some version of Hardened Scales, like black-green Hardened Scales with the snake, which has been doing really well lately. But I think, Eric, you just mentioned that you still feel that Mono Green Devotion might still be the best deck?
Well, I don't know. Now that I don't follow it that carefully, the format, but I know that they banned Leyline of Abundance and Oath of Nissa, and people were still winning with Mono Green Devotion. I think the Leyline was a big part of the deck, but I think the reason that this one of all the Devotion decks had the most success is because it could use Nykthos better than most monocolor decks, since green has better high-end cards.
And double green spells and everything, that push Nykthos even more. That's a good point. And James, I think you mentioned that you are super interested in the format itself, but you're still holding out, right? You haven't committed to any deck yet.
Yeah, I just feel like right now, I mean, it's obviously a lot of fun for everybody to brew and try different things. That's a lot of the fun of Magic. For me, I'd rather just sit back and wait a little bit, wait for the dust to settle, wait for a few more bans to come in before figuring out what I want to do with the format. I'm definitely interested, but I'm sort of still in this sit and wait kind of mindset.
Which is actually interesting, because that also has been my experience from the other side. There's a lot of people out there who really want to get into Pioneer, but they are waiting. They want to see what we as streamers or content producers are showing them. Because when I posted that I had been playing Green Black Elves, I got so many messages of people, hey, oh my god, is there a VOD? Can I get your sideboard guide? There's so much interest. And I saw it from other content creators too, who said that them putting out Pioneer content has given them better number than anything they have done over the last couple of months. So there's a ton of interest in Pioneer, and I honestly genuinely hope that this format is going to succeed and going to be amazing, and hopefully not going to turn into another version of Modern. Like, I liked Modern at certain points, but didn't really like it too much for most of its existence, just because it felt like, I don't know, that's like a philosophical thing. Maybe we should do an entire different episode on that. I just feel like my position is, if you want an eternal, or rather a non-rotating format to be good and remain good, you need some kind of police deck. And I know that not everybody agrees with me on this one. I don't know about you guys here exactly, but I just feel like there needs to be something that says that puts some kind of line out there, like, this is how greedy you can get, this is how far you can push it. If you go beyond that, then in Legacy you will be dazed, spell pierced, and wastelanded. So even though I'm not a big fan of the card Delver of Secret itself, I'm a fan of what the deck does for the format. In like, trying not to contradict myself with stuff I've said before, I think Delver these days has set the line a little bit too low. I think you should be able to get away with a little bit more in Legacy, but generally I like that Delver puts that line out there. And I think that for most of the existence of Modern, we didn't really have that. So that's why people got to go like super big and do the Tron thing, which would be almost unthinkable in a format with Wasteland, I guess. And I hope that Wizards is eventually gonna shape the format in a way that there's gonna be that line that I'm not, or for most of the existence of Modern, haven't really seen in Modern. And yeah, that's just like my take on Pioneer. I want the format to succeed, but I don't want the format to be a format where a card like Oath of Nissa needs to be banned. Because like, look at the card, it's ridiculous that this card needs to be banned in this format. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
I feel that Modern used to be in that place that you're talking about before they banned Splinter Twin.
I almost wanted to get at that, but I felt like, okay, this is another kind of form, so I didn't want to open. But yes, this is exactly how I feel about it.
Yeah, I don't know enough about Pioneer to have an opinion there, because I'm in the same boat as James. It's like, I'm interested in playing it, but I'm kind of just waiting, because I'm not going to invest in a format or in decks when the format's completely, open to weekly bans and people are, brewing and trying to figure it out. I'm not there yet until some things get figured out, as well as some stability in the format.
Yeah, okay, so looking forward to what we will be able to accomplish in Pioneer then. I hope there's going to be some kind of Elves Maverick-esque deck that I get to play, because that's just like the playstyle I like the most. So, guys, is there anything else you want to talk about? I think we are going to wrap up the show here. Going to call it a day, or at least a night for me. it's already getting quite late.
No, that's it for me.
No, I'm good.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Great. So let's go with James first. James, where can people get hold of you? What's the best way to get into contact with you?
Probably on Twitter. So it's James_HSU. You can also follow the Humans of Magic account. That's Humans of Magic, one word, on Twitter. Or even better yet, you can follow us at Cardboard Live, one word. We're all on Twitter.
Awesome. And Eric, as usual, where can people find you?
Twitch.tv/EWLandon, or on Twitter at EWLandon1.
And I'm It's Julian23 on Twitter, and Twitch TV/It's Julian for the streams of both my personal streams as well as the Legacy Premier League streams, which are going to return this Wednesday for actually the winner bracket semifinals. I'm going to play against Jarvis, and we're going to have, oh my god, this is going to be the biggest clash of the Titans thus far. We have Autumn Pachet against Javier Dominguez. Javier has looked unstoppable, but Autumn has also performed really well, so if you have time and you can make it at Wednesday, 6 p.m. East, definitely tune into Twitch TV/It's Julian to see those giants clash into each other, as well as Travis and me, to see who's going to make it to the winner bracket finals. A couple shoutouts here. I definitely want to give shoutouts to our Patreons, of course. You guys really make our show work. You allow me to stay up until 15 or 2:15 in the morning and produce the show. So thank you so much for that, everyone, seriously. Especially, of course, to our Eternal Witness supporters, Matt and James, as well as to our top-tier Grizzlebrand supporters, Baju, Scott, Kursh, and Jeremy. I sent out a lot of stickers earlier, actually in October already, and I think a lot of you have already received them. If you would like to receive stickers, head to patreon.com/everydayeternal, where you can become a Patreon, support the show, and also get that sweet swag. And actually, I started out sending t-shirts as well, so I hope our first t-shirts are gonna arrive soon. And if you're listening to this and you have an Everyday Eternal t-shirt and you want to, you don't even need to show yourself. I'd love to see it on Twitter in some kind of post. So there's that. Another shout out I want to do is to my friend Pierre and fellow tribal enthusiast, Pierre from Mage Market. Pierre's recently launched a 2.0 version of their app, and what they're doing is really, really cool, because you know how there's this problem in Magic right now. You can either buy from the really big stores and make sure that you get what you ordered, but you're paying a little bit extra for that, or you buy from what I want to call a crowdsourced platform, but and pay a little bit less, but run into the problem of sometimes, like a friend of mine, he ordered an original Antiquities Mishra's Factory, and so many people keep sending the Renaissance Mishra's Factory. I think he literally ordered it 3 times, and 3 times it was the wrong version, so he eventually gave up on it. So what Mage Market is doing, they have the middleman service. They receive all the cards. They make sure that it's not only the correct version in the first place, but also the correct language and condition. So if you really want that near mint Mishra's Factory, for example, which I guess is already quite hard to get, and a lot of people have a tendency to, is this really excellent? Maybe it's near mint. Yeah, you know that kind of shit. I guess to some degree, we've all been guilty of that at some point, but that's not something that you can actually pull on Mage Market because they verify the condition. So you as the buyer, you have nothing to worry about, right? You just order what you want and you're guaranteed to get that. So definitely check them out. They launched the app both in Europe and North America. There's some features that will soon be implemented in North America as well. Europe already has all of them. And if you use them, you can support me by using the code Julian. So if you, for example, don't want to become a Patreon, which I can totally see, like I also can't Patreon all the people that I want. If you use the checkout code Julian, you can basically have both of us. You can get the 5% discount, and using the code usually helps content creators. So that would be a cool thing. Check it out. I just ordered 4 foil copies of what's it called? The Triceratops, that really good dinosaur. Eric, you must know, you played against it yesterday.
I have no idea.
Shifting Ceratops.
Shifting Ceratops. It is quickly becoming a Maverick staple, according to my friend who plays
What? It's uncounterable.
Actually, saw a copy of it in the Maverick list that top 8'd the Orlov event.
That's my friend, yes.
Oh, that's him? Okay, awesome. Yeah, I just 5 out with it as well, and Shifting Ceratops was like a huge contributor to that. So maybe next episode we're going to talk a little bit about Dino Stompy. There's actually a little tiny part of me who actually wants to play Dino Stompy at GP Bologna. But it's probably going to be hard to get the cards for that to get. Actually, now they have the Shifting Ceratops. It's actually not going to be that hard at this point. So yeah, we're going to talk about GP Bologna and the episode right before the GP. We're going to have another episode where we talk about a couple of decks that we feel could be very well positioned. And with that, I want to say good morning, good evening, good night to everyone. James and Eric, thanks for being on tonight.
All right.
This is where you're supposed to say goodbye to.
This is goodbye. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.